I'm just a bill. That's right. And I think what you can say about Debbie is that she's got a lot of things in her portfolio that are just a bill and not much in terms of it's a law.
Okay, all right, and that makes sense to me. Again, this all comes back to, can you be the nominee who's going to beat her? And frankly, at this show, we want a conservative to be our next senator in the state of Michigan. Yeah. Getting back to the conservative side of it, folks have told me, folks on the very, very conservative right, that said, well, Pete, he's been around too long. He's not a maverick any longer. He had some votes that I didn't like. He voted for, let's say, the Cash for Clunkers. And yet, when I've done homework and looked at your record, you're one of the most conservative congressmen that's really been in modern times.
We've got a great conservative record. You know, any group that rates members on their votes would rate me very far to the on the conservative scale as being conservative. You know, 100% pro-life, straight A's from the NRA. You know, taxpayer superhero because I voted against spending and those types of things. There's no doubt and no question about my conservative credentials. Others will try to minimize those. But, you know, those are distortions. They're trying to take a couple of votes here and there. And you know what? After being in Congress for a number of years and looking back, you know, and looking back at a vote that I took 5 years ago, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, you might say, you know what? Hey, today, I don't like that vote either.
Okay.
All right.
How did that work out for you?
Yeah, how did that work out for you? And so, you know, that's the luxury of never having to have been accountable to actually make a decision. And just saying, well, you know, I wouldn't have voted for that. And it's kind of like, yeah, easy for you to say 5 years later.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that...
Does he ever let you ask a question?
Whenever I want to.
Okay,
yes.
All right.
He's doing such a good job,
Yeah.
I haven't butted in yet.
I do warn my co-hosts that they have to watch when I take a breath in order to dive in.
Yeah, okay, all right.
And of course, we are here to hear Pete Hoekstra talk about his bona fides and how not only how you're going to win, but you know a little bit of this history, because another point that you had brought up earlier today was that, and you touched on it just in this session, but when you're running strong, when we got a Senate candidate who's running strong in the state where the president can reasonably call his home state, the presidential candidate, we've got a 2-for-1 when it comes for the support from the national party. That you have a relationship with Mitt Romney, and I'm not really, I don't intend to take away from Clark Durant or Randy Heckman, but the facts are that you've built over many years, as you said, you've built a campaign and an organization and relationships that you won't be out of money on August 7th.
No, that's right. I mean, hey, I came out of the business world. You're always planning long term. You know, you're planning for the future. I spent 15 years at Herman Miller. You know, and what you recognize now, the election is not August 7th. Yeah, there's an election on August 7th, and it's important because it will pick the nominee. But the ultimate, the real key election is on November 6th, because that's where we will pick the president who will serve for the next 4 years, and where we will pick the person that will be sworn into the Senate on January 3 and will serve for 6 years. And, you know, the candidate that is selected on August 7th needs to be ready to run on the morning of August 8th. And people say, well, Pete, you know, you got 13 weeks to get ready.
Oh, yeah,
and it's kind of like,
you
no,
take a couple days off, take a cruise.
Yeah, no, and it's kind of like, no, you don't have 13 weeks to get ready, because absentee voters, early voters, they start voting on October 1. So you've got the balance of August and you've got all of September, but then absentee voters, early voting starts on October 1. You've got 7.5, 8 weeks to get ready for for the beginning of the voting. And you know, a lot of these other campaigns, none of these other campaigns are going to be ready on August 8th to fully engage Debbie and to start moving.
You mentioned that with perfect 20/20 hindsight, there's sometimes issues you would have, had you known what you know now, you would have voted differently. I know we're talking about the Republican primary here, and some of the ultra-conservatives are criticizing you for supporting bailouts, and I just wanted to know if you wanted to comment on those criticisms that are out there.
Well, I mean, we're in a financial crisis, and so the president, John McCain, Barack Obama, they're all, they're running for president at that time, and they're all talking about this fiscal crisis that we're headed to. And I wasn't convinced. So we had a vote on the Troubled Asset Relief Program, TARP as it's fondly called, and I voted no. And I'll never forget it. What happened? I've got a small little banker up in Scottsville, Michigan, who calls me, and he's kind of a crotchety guy, but he's always been a good friend and
Crotchety's
a good
okay.
Yeah, and a good friend. And he calls me and says, "Hey Pete, I'm going to take your picture. I'm going to put it up on my bulletin board. You're my hero. You said no." I said, "Thanks, Tom." And we talked to a lot of other people. There were a lot of people who were disappointed because they thought there was a real need to do this. Tom called me back 3 days later, and he'd been in the banking business for probably 35 years. And he said, "Pete, I've never seen anything like this before in the banking world. I can tell you right now that if you guys don't do something, the lines of credit are going to freeze. And this is not about Wall Street, Pete. This is about, Main Street, Ludington. It is about Main Street, Scottsville. It is about, Pentwater. It's about Muskegon. This is about Main Street, USA. And you're going to see a calamity that I've never thought I would see in my life if you don't do something." So I took his input from a lot of other people, and decided that as ugly as the choice was, that at that point in time there might have been better ways to have done it, but I only had one vote. It wasn't like maybe or I'll vote for that, but you need to make these changes. When we voted on TARP the second time around, there were a number of significant changes that had been made to the bill. And with the input that I received from Main Street, West Michigan, I voted for it. And we averted the calamity. Now, there will be those that will criticize that vote. And we don't know who's right, because we don't know what the alternative what would have happened in the alternative universe if we hadn't passed it. Would it have been as bad as what people said it was going to be? But would it be for a very short duration? Would it have been not too bad, or would it have been really, really ugly? And what we have seen is that we've come back. We didn't have the calamity, and I think if we'd had a president that had not embarked on a stimulus plan, had not wanted to clearly demonstrate that he wanted to increase taxes, if we had had a president who wasn't focused on taking over health care and instead had focused on what it was necessary to get this economy going, I think we would have all been better 3 or 4 years later. But after we did the TARP vote, we got a president who took us down a direction that I think has significantly weakened the economy, and done so to a much greater extent than whatever happened under TARP.
I have noticed, too, that regardless of what your position is regarding bailouts or stimulus, that this one actually did work out, that the economy didn't go, and also the money was paid back, unlike some of the other stimulus money where it hasn't been paid back.
Much of the money has been paid back. It hasn't all been paid back, but much of the money has been paid back. But, this election is not going to be about TARP. This election is going to be about, do you really believe that Debbie Stabenow and Barack Obama have a vision for our economy that will give us confidence, will give our friends and neighbors confidence that this economy is going to come back? Do we really believe in their scheme for raising taxes, that will help create jobs for our kids and for our neighbors? I don't think so. Excuse me. Do we really think that his plans for regulation, increased regulations, Obamacare, Dodd-Frank, EPA, and all of these types of things, that this is going to help the economy. I don't think so. Do we really believe that this president is willing to embrace the concept of being energy independent? That we will use our vast resources of coal, gas, and oil to finally wean us off of a dependency on Venezuela and the Middle East? I don't think so. I think this guy's going to go after fossil fuels. His administration, if he's in office for four more years, I think they will go after fossil fuels very, very hard.